Hello everyone, welcome to the Declarative Case YouTube channel. Today we have a really important topic. We will talk about AWS Amplify and Flutter. We will talk about the relationship these two have and how you can use AWS Amplify with your Flutter applications. So if you're ready, let's get started. AWS Amplify is your biggest companion to build full-stack applications on web and mobile. It leverages AWS technologies behind the scenes to provide you a set of tools to move forward faster with your application development. AWS Amplify has four main tools to help you out with your application development. It is Amplify Hosting, Amplify Studio, Amplify CLI, and Amplify Libraries. Let's start off with AWS Amplify Hosting. AWS Amplify Hosting is the tool that you can use to host your websites. You can connect it to your CI/CD system. You can connect it to your GitHub or GitLab or any other Git provider, and you can automate your hosting environment. You can see that AWS Amplify Hosting supports all the modern web frameworks like React, Angular, Vue. But in addition to this, you can also use it for your Flutter web applications as well. I will share the link so you can check it out later on. Next tool that comes with AWS Amplify is Amplify Studio. Amplify Studio is a website that you can use to visualize your backend operations. You can take care of your data modeling. You can also build your UI by using Amplify Studio. You can build your React forms, or you can connect your Figma file with Amplify Studio and generate React code with it. In addition to this, Amplify Studio helps you to host your app, check out your authentication, check out your file storage, and do many more operations. Next one is Amplify CLI. Amplify CLI is the tool that we are going to be using to use AWS Amplify and integrate any other AWS cloud services for your application. It helps you to initialize your application with Amplify and add any libraries that you would like to use. Last but not least, we will talk about Amplify Libraries. As a mobile developer, Amplify Libraries is the most important part for me. It gives you many open source client libraries that you can use with your applications by powering them with AWS. All you need to do is to use these libraries and the rest of the complication will be handled for you. Amplify has many libraries that you can use. You have analytics for tracking. You have REST and GraphQL API to power your backend. You have authentication for all the user operations. You have data store for offline first data operations. You have also in-app messaging, interactions, and many other libraries that you can use to power your applications. Now that we did an intro to Amplify, let's continue by seeing the relationship between AWS Amplify and Flutter. Amplify Flutter is the port of the Amplify libraries that is supporting Flutter application. Like the other libraries, it is also an open source project. Right now, Amplify libraries are supported for the following categories: analytics, API for REST and GraphQL, authentication, data store, and storage. With the current stable version, all of these libraries are supported for mobile, which is iOS and Android. However, due to the nature of Flutter, Amplify team has seen that it is really important to support web and desktop platforms as well. That is why Amplify Flutter team has actually done a really important decision. They decided to rewrite all the libraries by using Dart. With the Dart first rewrite, they released a developer preview version of the libraries. You can see that analytics, REST and GraphQL API, authentication and storage are supported for all the supported platforms for Flutter. Just to keep in mind, developer preview means it is not intended for production usage yet. However, if you would like to use it, you can check out the web and desktop support tickets and monitor the status of the changes. If you do not see any blocker for you, you can use it at your own risk. If you see any issues with Amplify Flutter, go ahead and check out the open issues. If you see a similar one, raise that again. If you do not see it, create your own one. Now that we have covered enough ground, let's see how we can use AWS Amplify with Flutter. For using AWS Amplify with Flutter, you need to have two things. One of them is an AWS account, the other one is AWS Amplify CLI tool. For creating an AWS account, you can either follow the steps that is provided to you on the website, or you can follow this guide that I'm going to be sharing with you. For installing Amplify CLI, you can either use npm or curl. Once you use any of these commands, you will be able to add the Amplify to your path. Once it is added to your path and you write Amplify to your terminal, you should be able to see many console outputs that supports that it is installed successfully. After the installation, first thing that you need to do is to configure the Amplify. For configuring Amplify, you need to write Amplify configure and press enter. Once you see that you are logged into your AWS console, you can close the browser and go back to the terminal. Click on enter as suggested. Pick the region that is more suitable for you. This will create an IAM user for you. You can either define the username or use the default one. I decided to define my username. Afterwards, click enter. In the opened up window, click on Next. Be sure to select the Amplify Administrator Access. Click on Next again and create the user. Once the user is created, copy the access key ID and the secret access key as well. Go back to your terminal and paste the access key ID and the secret access key. Once it is pasted, click on Enter. It will ask you to create an AWS profile on your machine. Let's call this declarative cast as well. Once it is done, you have successfully created a new user. Now it is time to create a Flutter application. For creating a new Flutter application, you can write Flutter create and the name of your application, and that should be enough. Once it is created, let's open the project on the IDE. We created the project, but we are not going to touch it yet. We will make changes later on. Now it is time to add AWS Amplify to our project. Be sure that you are in the root folder of your project. At the root folder, write Amplify in it and click Enter. Amplify CLI will guide you through the initialization of the project. You can either use the default variables or you can define it by yourself. When you see a parenthesis next to a question, it means that it is the default value. When you want to use the default value, click on Enter. Amplify CLI is smart enough to understand which kind of project that you are trying to run. It will generate the files according to the app type that you have. You can either initialize the project with the default variables that is generated for you, or modify each one and pick the one that is suitable for you. When you click on Enter, it will accept the default ones. For using AWS resources, you can either use AWS Profile or AWS Access Keys for authentication. Since we created a brand new IAM user, let's use that one. For using it, you need to have AWS Profile. You can see that declarative cast is in the list. Click on Enter on that. Once you click on Enter, it will generate the resources for your project on the cloud. Once it is done, you can either accept or reject the improvement suggestion. After that, congratulations, you just initialized AWS Amplify on your Flutter project. Now let's check out the Amplify project. You can see that it created an Amplify folder, an Amplify configuration.dart file. These two holds really important information about your application. They hold the cloud references that your app is going to be using. In addition, it will hold the authentication and API information there as well. Most of the time, you will not be interacting with any of these files. When you need to, you will be guided to do so. Next step that we are going to do is to actually add a new library. We will add an authentication flow so you can see AWS Amplify in action. For that purpose, go back to the terminal again and write Amplify add auth and click on Enter. You can see that, like initialization, it helps you through the process as well. You can have a default configuration, manual configuration, or default configuration with social provider as well. Click on the default configuration. It will ask you to wait to log in. I will be using username because we will have email address anyway. Email address will be used to confirm the user. Click on Enter to have the username. It will ask us if I want to do any advanced settings. We are not going to do that, so click on Enter again. Now that everything is settled, let's write Amplify push and send these changes to the cloud. For sending the changes to the cloud, press on Enter. Before it pushes, it will let us know about the changes that we do. For accepting it, you can click on Enter. Once it is done, it will send the changes to the cloud. In the meantime, let's go back to our Flutter project. For adding authentication flow, we are not going to write anything complicated. We will use a library that is provided to us by the AWS Amplify again. This library is called Amplify UI Library. It supports Angular, Flutter, React, React Native, and Vue. It gives us components that we can plug into our application. For Flutter, it has something called Authenticator. For using Authenticator, we need to add the libraries to our project and add them under the dependencies section. After you add them, click on pub-get. Once you get the libraries, go back to the main.dart file. Once you go there, create a configure amplify function. This function will be responsible for anything Amplify related configuration. Now let's update the function. In the function, we will add the plugins that we are going to be using. For adding them, we will use an add plugins function or add plugin function. In addition to this, we will use the generated configuration file in this function as well. The Amplify config variable comes from the generated file. This function is a feature. We can either call it in a feature builder or we can call it before the app starts, so we will be sure that Amplify configuration happened before the app is actually shown. And lastly, we need to be sure that widgets Flutter binding is initialized before the configuration happens for Amplify, because Amplify needs to attach these information to the Flutter's binding. Now that we have configured Amplify for our application, let's add the authentication snippet and run the application. For adding the authentication flow, we need to add the authenticator on top of the material app and let the material app know that we will take care of the navigation about the authentication. Before we run the application, let's be sure that deployment was successful. Since we saw that it was successful, let's run the application on macOS. You can see that initial start will have some errors. The reason is for each platform we need to do a little setup. For checking the setups that you need, I will share the link so you can go ahead and check it out. For macOS, we need to have 10.15 or higher, and we need to enable the network calls. Lastly, the keychain. After you enable the keychain access, internet connection, and increase the minimum OS version, now you are ready to continue. You can go back to your terminal and run Flutter run to run it on your macOS. You can see that thanks to the authenticator, you can create an account or sign in with it. Once you create an account, you also have a mechanism to confirm your account as well. Once you confirm your account, you will be logged into your application. And you can see that the Flutter's counter application shows its all glory. In this video, we have seen many capabilities of AWS Amplify and how it works with Flutter. You can take this video and continue your journey with AWS Amplify by using Flutter libraries. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask us. You can reach out to us by over AWS Amplify Discord or any other social media. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're looking for any more topics, please write it as a comment below, and I'm really happy to share this journey with you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.